In November 1987, European authorities made a stunning discovery at sea. The French Coast Guard intercepted a freighter, the MV Exend, in the Bay of Biscay. Inside were 120 tons of weaponry destined for the Irish Republican Army. It was a huge arsenal. Heavy machine guns, crates of rifles, anti-tank rockets, even surface-to-air missiles, and over 1 million rounds of ammunition. This was not a one-off incident, but the climax of a long, secretive effort to arm the IRA. Over decades of conflict in Northern Ireland, the IRA, a paramilitary group fighting to end British rule, acquired its weapons through elaborate international networks. The Irish-American connection. In the 1970s, Irish Republican militants found an eager base of support in the United States. During the conflict known as the Troubles, Irish Americans, many with ancestral ties to Ireland, rallied behind the IRA's cause. They organized benefit events, passed around donation jars in pubs, and formed groups to legally and illegally support the Republican movement. The most prominent organization was NORAID, Irish Northern Aid Committee, founded in 1970, which served as a fundraising conduit. Over the course of the 1970s and 1980s, NORAID raised millions of dollars from American donors. While NORAID claimed the money was for families of political prisoners, investigators believed much of it ultimately helped purchase weapons for the IRA. Money was only one part of the American pipeline. Actual firearms were procured on US soil and then smuggled into Ireland. By the early 1970s, the IRA had managed to acquire a significant arsenal of modern American-made weapons. In fact, by 1972, the IRA possessed large quantities of Armalite rifles and other modern small arms, many of them purchased in the United States. The Armalite, a lightweight rapid-fire rifle, became a symbolic weapon of the IRA's armed campaign, so much so that Republicans often spoke of carrying the Armalite and the ballot box as dual tools of their struggle. One key figure behind the transatlantic gun running was George Harrison, a veteran IRA member who had emigrated to New York in the 1930s. Harrison operated a secret network to source and ship weapons. Working through an Italian-American arms dealer with underworld connections, he spent the 1970s buying firearms ranging from pistols to automatic rifles. Harrison coordinated closely with NORAID contacts. According to one account, virtually all guns smuggled from the United States passed through his network. These operations were audacious. Smugglers hid weapons in everything from cargo shipments to the luggage of sympathetic travelers. There are accounts of guns being ferried across the Atlantic on commercial ships, even stashed aboard the Queen Elizabeth II ocean liner by crew members who supported the cause. By 1971, authorities in Northern Ireland had already seized 700 firearms, 2 tons of explosives, and 157,000 rounds of ammunition from IRA arms dumps. And most of this was traced back to the United States. As the conflict intensified, the IRA's American supporters sought heavier firepower. In one notorious incident in 1977, a batch of M60 machine guns and about 100 M16 rifles were stolen from a National Guard armory in the United States, destined for IRA hands. By this time, the IRA had also dispatched operatives like Gabriel McGahey to purchase additional weapons in America, including Armalite AR-15 and Heckler & Koch rifle. Such blatant gun running eventually drew the full attention of US law enforcement. Starting in the mid-1970s, the FBI and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, or ATF, launched a crackdown on IRA arms trafficking in the United States. Dozens of people were arrested and put on trial for smuggling weapons into Ireland. US prosecutors racked up several convictions. For example, in 1976, a federal investigation in Baltimore broke up a ring of 5 IRA-linked gun runners, seizing 70 illegally purchased AR-15 rifles that were about to be shipped out. According to a US Senate report, those men had been using fake names and forged gun licenses to amass firearms for the IRA. By 1977, even prominent American politicians acknowledged that the once open pipeline was being choked off. House Speaker Tip O'Neill, a key Irish-American figure, privately informed British officials that the flow of guns and money had been greatly reduced. One IRA supporter later remarked that no major arms shipments got through the US after the late 1970s, as Harrison's network was gradually dismantled. Even so, the American connection did not disappear overnight. In 1981, the FBI staged a sting that led to the arrest of Harrison and several other associates, including a former IRA chief of staff, Michael Flannery. They were arrested for attempting to smuggle in a new cache of weapons, a shipment that even included a flamethrower and an anti-tank rifle. Intriguingly, when the case went to trial in 1982, the accused gunrunners were acquitted on all counts. Their defense argued that they believed the CIA had secretly approved the arms exports, a claim that introduced just enough doubt for the jury to free them. It was a sensational outcome, but by then the damage to the IRA's US supply was all but finished. American authorities had successfully crippled the network, forcing the IRA to seek new sources of arms abroad. Even as the Irish-American arms pipeline was dying, it was not the first nor the only international link that the IRA had smuggling weapons into Ireland. Decades earlier, the IRA had explored an alliance with a far more menacing foreign power. In the late 1930s, with Europe on the brink of war, the Irish Republican Army found itself in a peculiar position. The IRA's primary enemy was the British state, and soon, Britain would be at war with Nazi Germany. Sensing an opportunity, IRA leaders considered an old adage. They reached out for help to Hitler's Third Reich, hoping that Germany's war against Britain might become Ireland's Trojan horse. Across the continent, Nazi officials were indeed interested in exploiting Irish discontent. In 1939, as World War II began, the German military intelligence service, the Abwehr, dispatched agents to make clandestine contact with the IRA. One such agent, Oscar Faust, was instructed to find the IRA's leadership and ask if they would cooperate with Germany, and if so, to arrange a meeting in Berlin. The idea was straightforward. The IRA could sabotage British targets or even open a new front in Ireland, thereby diverting British resources. In return, the Germans hinted at providing arms, ammunition, and training. The IRA's chief of staff at the time, Sean Russell, was enthusiastic about the prospect. According to later historical accounts, Russell was elated by the prospect of German arms, ammunition, and money for the IRA's campaign. He quickly sent an envoy to Germany to discuss concrete plans with Nazi officials. From 1939 through 1940, these contacts led to a blueprint for collaboration. The most ambitious proposal would later be dubbed Plan Kathleen. Plan Kathleen was the code name for an unlikely invasion scheme. An IRA officer named Stephen Carroll Held had drafted a plan and presented it to German intelligence, suggesting that German forces invade Northern Ireland with the help of IRA volunteers. The IRA promised that 5,000 IRA fighters would rise up to assist a German landing. In theory, a German-backed seizure of Northern Ireland could have created chaos for Britain in the midst of the Second World War. Berlin took the proposal seriously enough to investigate. In May 1940, at the height of the Nazi blitzkrieg in Western Europe, the Third Reich sent a secret agent via parachute into Ireland. This agent, Dr. Hermann Gortz, carried radio equipment and instructions to liaise with the IRA. His mission was to assess the feasibility of Plan Kathleen and coordinate with IRA leaders on the ground. However, this bold plan unraveled almost as soon as it began. Gortz's arrival did not go undetected, and within days, Irish authorities, likely tipped off by surveillance and code-breaking, raided an address in Dublin where Gortz had been staying. They arrested Stephen Held, the IRA man who authored the plan, and seized telling evidence, including a German parachute, a military wireless set, and even a German officer's cap. While all this happened, the net was closing in on Gortz. The German agent managed to slip away and went into hiding, but the IRA's Nazi connection was now exposed. Over the following months, Irish police and Allied intelligence hunted Gortz throughout Ireland. He was eventually captured in November 1941 and interned for the remainder of the war. The ambitious Plan Kathleen was dead on arrival. Meanwhile, Sean Russell, the IRA leader who had brokered the German contact, was in Germany awaiting an arms delivery. In the summer of 1940, Russell traveled to Berlin and even met Nazi Foreign Minister Joachim von Ribbentrop. The Germans agreed to send him back to Ireland by submarine as part of Operation Dove, a mission to land an IRA German team on Irish shores. But fate intervened in a tragic way. In August 1940, Russell died suddenly while aboard the U-boat carrying him home, reportedly from a perforated ulcer. He was buried at sea by the German crew, and with him died the highest level link between the IRA and Nazi Germany. Nazi Germany's secret offer to arm the IRA ultimately yielded little tangible results. No significant weapons shipments ever reached the IRA from the Third Reich, aside from a handful of radios and plans. British and Irish intelligence had effectively thwarted the attempted collaboration, yet this episode remains a striking example of how far the IRA, at a desperate moment, would go for help from an enemy's enemy. This next chapter in the IRA arms saga takes us to North Africa. Decades after World War II, as the troubles raged in the 1970s and 1980s, the IRA found a new international benefactor, one with deep pockets and an anti-Western vendetta. This was Colonel Gaddafi's Libyan arsenal. In the mid-1970s, the IRA's campaign caught the attention of Libya's leader, Colonel Muammar Gaddafi. Gaddafi was a vocal anti-imperialist figure on the world stage. He despised the British and American governments, and he saw the IRA as kindred revolutionaries fighting Western colonialism. Supporting the IRA fit Gaddafi's strategy of undermining Western interests, a way to strike at the UK, and by extension the US, without direct confrontation. With this, an unlikely alliance was born. Libya became the primary state sponsor and arms supplier to the IRA during some of the bloodiest years of the Troubles. The relationship solidified in the early 1970s, with Joe Cahill, a senior IRA leader, traveling to Libya to seek Gaddafi's help, and the Libyan regime agreed. In 1973, the first major Libyan arms shipment was dispatched by sea. A freighter named the Claudia left port in Tripoli loaded with 5 tons of weapons and ammunition bound for Ireland. The cargo included an array of Soviet-made arms, about 250 firearms, along with plastic explosives, anti-tank mines, and thousands of rounds of ammunition. But this initial run did not go as planned. Acting on intelligence, the Irish Navy intercepted the Claudia off the coast of the county Waterford. Commandos boarded the ship and discovered the hidden arsenal, catching the smugglers red-handed. Among those on board was Joe Cahill himself, the IRA envoy who had negotiated the deal. The Claudia seizure was a major victory for Irish authorities, but it turned out to be just the tip of the iceberg. Investigators later estimated that at least 3 other Libyan arms shipments of similar size had successfully arrived in Ireland around the same time period. In other words, while one ship was caught, several others slipped through unnoticed, delivering their deadly cargo to the IRA. Those early Libyan consignments gave the IRA a notable boost in capability. According to journalist Ed Maloney, they included the IRA's first RPG-7 rocket launchers, a weapon the guerrillas had not previously possessed. Gaddafi also provided cash along with weapons, and by the mid-1970s, Libya had given an estimated $3 to $5 million to the IRA to finance its activities. This infusion of arms and money from a foreign government was unprecedented in the IRA's history up to that point. For a few years after 1973, the Libyan IRA channel went quiet, partly due to diplomatic pressures and a temporary cooling of relations. But the hunger strikes by IRA prisoners in 1981 and their international publicity apparently rekindled Gaddafi's sympathy for the IRA's cause. By the mid-1980s, the secret flow of arms from Libya resumed with even greater volume. Gaddafi, enraged by a 1986 US airstrike on Libya, which had been launched from British bases, sought revenge by massively rearming the IRA. The Libyan dictator essentially opened his armories to Irish militants. What followed was a dramatic buildup of the IRA's arsenal between 1985 and 1986. Libya sent at least 4 large arms shipments to the IRA. This time, the quantities were much larger than the 1970s efforts. So large that intelligence reports said the weapons could equip 2 full infantry battalions. The manifests of these ships read like military shopping lists. Heavy machine guns, more than 1,000 AK-47 rifles, hundreds of semi-automatic pistols, dozens of RPG-7 grenade launchers, SAM-7 surface-to-air missiles, flamethrowers, sniper rifles, anti-tank weapons, and an enormous supply of ammunition. Perhaps most significantly, Libya provided the IRA with several tons of Semtex, a powerful Czech-made plastic explosive that is malleable, odorless, and difficult to detect by X-ray. The influx of Semtex was a game-changer for the IRA's bombing campaign. With this stable yet potent explosive, the IRA could construct smaller, more lethal bombs that were harder to trace. And from late 1986 onward, virtually every IRA bomb contained Libyan-supplied Semtex. Attacks that previously would have relied on bulkier homemade explosives could now be carried out with a fraction of the material and a fraction of the cost. For a period of time, these Libyan arms runs went almost completely undetected by Western intelligence. It was later described as a major intelligence failure that 4 huge shipments made it through 1985 and 1986 without interception. British and Irish agencies simply did not realize the scale of what was happening until after the weapons were already in IRA hands. The break in the case came in late 1987, when, acting on a tip-off, French authorities tracked a ship suspected of running arms to Ireland. On the 1st of November 1987, they swooped in on the Exant, a modest coastal freight liner, and forced it into port. What they found astonished even seasoned investigators: approximately 120 tons of weaponry from Libya packed into the vessel's hold. This one shipment alone contained enough arms to supply a small army, including heavy machine guns, rocket-propelled grenade launchers, and dozens of SAM-7 anti-aircraft missiles, mortars, anti-tank mines, and over 1 million rounds of ammunition, again. The Exxon's Libyan crew and an IRA representative on board were arrested and the weapons were confiscated. It was later revealed that the Exxon had roughly 1/3 of the total arms Libya had sent to the IRA during the 1980s. The discovery of the Exxon was a turning point in this battle. It effectively ended Gaddafi's arms pipeline to the IRA. The scandal and international pressure forced Libya to step back, especially as Gaddafi faced other crises. But by then, the IRA had accumulated an unprecedented stockpile of modern weapons. Security analysts noted that never before in its history had the IRA been so well armed. In fact, years later, as the conflict wound down, authorities estimated that hundreds of AK-47s from the Libyan shipments were still in IRA arms caches, sitting unused. This is a testament to just how much weaponry the IRA had received from their Libyan connection. Libya's support also wasn't only in the form of guns and bombs, as Gaddafi had funneled an estimated $12 to $14 million in cash to the IRA over the years. A contribution Libya officially admitted to British officials in 1992. The Libyan connection had enabled the IRA to carry out some of its most high-profile and destructive attacks in the 1980s. But it also ultimately drew intense international scrutiny. The sheer scale of the arms flooding in from Tripoli alarmed governments and helped push diplomatic efforts to cut off the flow. By the late 1980s, with the pipeline winding down and Libya under global pressure, this chapter of the IRA's arms supply was closing in. Each of these secret channels, the Irish-American fundraisers, the Nazi wartime contacts, and Gaddafi's Libyan arsenal, played a pivotal role in arming the IRA at different points in time. They demonstrate how a guerrilla movement in Northern Ireland was able to sustain itself through a global web of connections. What appeared to British authorities as an Irish problem was in reality entangled with actors on multiple continents. American citizens sympathetic to the cause, German spies plotting sabotage, and a North African dictator shipping tons of weapons throughout the 1980s. As the 1990s approached, the conflict in Northern Ireland shifted towards a political resolution. The IRA, though still armed to the teeth, faced growing pressure to lay down its weapons in favor of negotiations. For investigators and historians, unraveling these arms supply lines has been key to understanding the Troubles. Following the money and the guns provided insight into the IRA's capabilities and global reach. It also highlighted the geopolitical ripple effects. Actions taken in Belfast or Derry were linked to decisions made in New York, Hamburg, and Tripoli. This is a sobering reminder that local conflicts can draw in global actors, each with their own agendas. The story of the IRA's armed networks is one of secrecy, ingenuity, and international intrigue. From suitcases of cash to crates of rifles, from wartime spies to phantom packs, from shiploads of heavy weaponry to the deserts of Libya, these clandestine networks kept the IRA's war going for longer and fiercer than it ever could have on its own. And ultimately, exposing these networks was crucial in order to choke off the supply of arms and create conditions for peace. In retrospect, the guns of the Troubles were never just an Irish phenomenon. They were the product of a hidden global struggle. Uncovering who armed the IRA reveals not only a secret history of the conflict, but also the unintended connections that tie distant nations to a local war. Thank you so much for watching.